Alright, let's set this thing up. Surprise! We're doing something a little bit different today. I think my description does a fairly good job of describing what this is about. So, this is actually one of my favorite short stories. It's in the public domain. I guess obviously, since I'm just gonna read somebody else's story. But, yeah, it's one of those obscure things no one's ever heard of. If you're interested in any more of this author's stories, I think they're all on LibriVox. I think everything he ever wrote, this would have been 1880. I should check the date. Anyway, I'm pretty sure everything he's ever written is in the public domain. And he has a bunch of fun stories. This one just happens to be my favorite. So, let me go ahead and get this all set up. Most importantly, zoot. Excellent. Okie dokie. Is there anything else I need to say? I don't think there's anything else that I need to say. I think we can just get started. So I got this on Project Gutenberg. Let me go ahead and show that. You know what? I'll just throw a link in the description. That's probably the easiest way. Yeah, let's just do that real quick. Give people another couple of moments to find the stream so they don't miss the beginning. There you go. Okay, it's in the description, and let's get started. So, there's a whole bunch of different writings of him that I'm not going to do. I'm just going to do the Beeman of Orn by Frank R. Stockton. Copyright 1887. All right. The Beeman of Orn. In the ancient country of Orn, there lived an old man who was called the Bee-Man, because his whole time was spent in the company of bees. He lived in a small hut, which was nothing more than an immense beehive, for these creatures had built their honeycombs in every corner of the one room it contained, on the shelves, under the table, all around the rough bench on which the old man sat, and even about the headboard and along the sides of his low bed. All day the air in the room was thick with the buzzing of insects. But this did not interfere in any way with the old bee-man, who walked in among them, ate his meals, and went to sleep without the slightest fear of being stung. He had lived with the bees so long, they had become so accustomed to his skin, they had become so accustomed to him, and his skin was so tough and hard, that the bees no more thought of stinging him than they would of stinging a tree or a stone. A swarm of bees had made their hive in a pocket of his old leathern doublet, and when he put on this coat to take one of his long walks in the forest in search of wild bees' nests, he was very glad to have the hive with him, for, if he did not find any wild honey, he would put his hand in his pocket and take out a piece of honeycomb for a luncheon. The bees in his pocket worked very industriously, and he was always certain of having something to eat with him wherever he went. He lived principally upon honey, and when he needed bread or meat, he carried his fine combs to the village not far away and bartered them for other food. He was ugly, untidy, shriveled, and brown. He was poor, and the bees seemed to be his only friends. But for all that, he was happy and contented. He had all the honey he wanted, and his bees, whom he considered the best company in the world, were as friendly and sociable as they could be, and seemed to increase in number every day. One day, there stopped at the hut of the Bee-Man a Junior Sorcerer. This young person, who was a student of magic, necromancy, and the kindred arts, was much interested in the Bee-Man, whom he had frequently noticed in his wanderings, and he considered him an admirable subject for study. He had got a great deal of useful practice by endeavoring to find out, by the various rules and laws of sorcery, exactly why the old bee-man did not happen to be something that he was not, and why he was what he happened to be. He had studied a long time at this matter, and he had found out something. "Do you know," he said when the bee-man came out of his hut, "that you have been transformed?" "What do you mean by that?" said the other, much surprised. "You have surely heard of animals and human beings who've been magically transformed into different kinds of creatures?" "Why, yes, I've heard of these things," said the bee-man. "But what have I been transformed from?" "That is more than I know," said the Junior Sorcerer. "But one thing is certain. You ought to be changed back. If you will find out what you have been transformed from, I will see that you are made all right again. Nothing would please me better than to attend to such a case." And, having a great many things to study and investigate, the Junior Sorcerer went on his way. This information greatly disturbed the mind of the bee-man. If he had been changed from something else, he ought to be that other thing, whatever it was. He ran after the young man and overtook him. "If you know, kind sir," he said, that I have been transformed, you surely are able to tell me what it is that I was." "No," said the Junior Sorcerer. "My studies have not proceeded far enough for that. When I become a senior, I can tell you all about it. But in the meantime, it will be well for you to try to discover for yourself your original form, and when you've done that, I will get some of the learned masters of my art to restore you to it. It'll be easy enough to do that. But you could not expect them to take the time and trouble to find out what it was." And, with these words, he hurried away and was soon lost to view. Greatly disquieted, the bee-man retraced his steps and went into his hut. Never before had he heard anything which so troubled him. "I wonder what I was transformed from," he thought, seating himself on his rough bench. "Could it have been a giant, or a powerful prince, or some gorgeous being whom the magicians or the fairies wished to punish? It may be that I was a dog or a horse, or perhaps a fiery dragon, or a horrid snake. I hope it was not one of those, but whatever it is, every one has certainly a right to his original form, and I am resolved to find out mine. I will start early tomorrow morning, and I am sorry now that I have not more pockets to my old doublet, so that I may carry more bees and more honey for my journey." He spent the rest of the day making a hive out of twigs and straw, and, having transferred a number of honeycombs and colonies of bees which had just swarmed, he rose before sunrise the next day, and having put on his leathern doublet, and having bound his new hive to his back, he set forth on his quest. The bees were to accompany him, buzzing around him like a cloud. As the bee-man passed through the little village, the people greatly wondered at his queer appearance. With a hive upon his back, "The bee-man is going on a long expedition this time," they said, but no one imagined the strange business on which he was bent. After noon he sat down under a tree near a beautiful meadow covered with blossoms, and ate a little honey. Then he untied his hive and stretched himself out on the grass to rest. As he gazed upon his bees hovering about him, some going out to the blossoms in the sunshine, and some returning laden with sweet pollen, he said to himself, "They know just what they have to do, and they do it. Oh, but alas for me! I know not what I may have to do, and yet whatever it may be, I am determined to do it. In some way or other, I will find out what was my original form, and then I will have myself changed back to it." And now the thought came to him that, perhaps his original form might have been something very disagreeable, even horrid. "But it does not matter," he said sturdily. Whatever I was, that I shall be again. It is not right for anyone to retain a form which does not properly belong to him. I have no doubt I shall discover my original form in the same way that I find the trees in which the wild bees hive. When I first catch sight of a bee tree, I am drawn towards it. I know not how. Something says to me, that is what you're looking for. In the same way, I believe I will find my original form when I see it. I shall be drawn towards it. Something will say to me, that is it. When the Beeman was rested, he started off again, and in about an hour he entered a fair domain. Around him were beautiful lawns, grand trees, and lovely gardens, while at little distance stood the stately palace of the lord of the domain. Richly dressed people were walking about, or sitting in the shade of the trees and arbors. Splendidly caparisoned horses were waiting for their riders, and everywhere were seen signs of opulence and gaiety. I think, said the Beeman to himself, that I should like to stop here for a time. If it should happen that I was originally like any of these happy creatures, well, it would please me much. He untied his hive and hid it behind some bushes, and taking off his old doublet, laid that beside it. It would not do to have his bees flying around him if he wished to go among the inhabitants of this fair domain. For 2 days the Beeman wandered about the palace and its grounds, avoiding notice as much as possible. He looked at everything. He saw handsome men and lovely ladies, the finest horses, dogs, and cattle that were ever known, beautiful birds in their cages, and fishes in crystal globes, and it seemed to him the best of all living things were here collected. At the close of the 2nd day, the Beeman said to himself, there is one being here towards whom I feel very much drawn, and that is the lord of the domain. I cannot feel certain that I was once like him, but it would be a fine thing if it were so. It seems impossible for me to be drawn towards any other being in the domain when I look upon him, so handsome, rich, and powerful. But I must observe him more closely. I feel more sure of the matter before applying to the sorcerers to change me back into a lord of a fair domain. The next morning, the Beeman saw the lord of the domain walking in his gardens. He slipped along the shady paths and followed him, so as to observe him closely, and find out if he were really drawn to this noble and handsome being. The lord of the domain walked on for some time, not noticing the Beeman was behind him, but suddenly turning, he saw the little old man. "What are you doing here, you vile beggar?" he cried, and gave him a kick that sent him into the bushes that grew by the side of the path. The Beeman scrambled to his feet and ran as fast as he could to the place where he had hidden the hive and his old doublet. If I am certain of anything, he thought, it was that I was never a person who would kick a poor old man. I will leave this place. I was transformed from nothing that I see here. He now traveled for a day or 2 longer, and then he came to a great black mountain, near the bottom of which was an opening like the mouth of a cave. This mountain, he had heard, was filled with caverns and underground passages, which were the abodes of dragons, evil spirits, and horrid creatures of all kinds. "Ah me," said the Beeman with a sigh, "I suppose I ought to visit this place. If I am going to do this thing properly, I should look on all sides of the subject, and I may have been one of those horrid creatures myself." Thereupon he went to the mountain, and as he approached the opening of the passage, which led into the innermost recesses, he saw, sitting upon the ground, and leaning his back against a tree, a languid youth. "Good day," said this individual when he saw the Beeman. "Are you going inside?" "Yes," said the Beeman, "that is what I intend to do." "Then," said the languid youth, slowly rising to his feet, "I think I will go with you. I was told that if I went in there, I should get my energies toned up, and they need it very much. But I did not feel equal to entering it myself, and I thought I would wait until someone came along. I am very glad to see you, and we will go in together." So the two went into the cave, and they had proceeded a very short distance when they met a very little creature, whom it was easy to recognize as a very imp. He was about 2 feet high, and resembled in color a freshly polished pair of boots. He was extremely lively and active, and came bounding towards them. "What did you two people come in here for?" he asked. "I came to have my energies toned up," said the languid youth. "You have come to the right place," said the very imp. "We will tone you up. And what does the old bee-man want?" "Ah, he was transformed from something, and he wants to find out what it is. He thinks it may have been one of the things in here." I should not wonder if it were so," said the very imp, rolling his head on one side and eyeing the bee-man with a critical gaze. "All right," said the very imp. "He can go around and pick out his previous existence. We have all sorts of vile creepers, crawlers, hissers, and snorters. I suppose he thinks anything would be better than a bee-man." "It's not because I want to become better than I am," said the bee-man, "that I started out this search. I have simply an honest desire to become what I originally was." "Oh, that is it, is it?" said the other. "There's an idiotic mooncalf here with a clam head, which must be just like what you used to be." "Nonsense," said the bee-man. "You have not the least idea what an honest purpose is. I shall go about and see for myself." "Go ahead," said the very imp, "and I will attend to this fellow who wants to get toned up." So saying, he joined the languid youth. "Look here," said that individual, regarding with interest. "Do you black and shine yourself every morning?" "No," said the other. "It's a waterproof varnish. You want to be invigorated, don't you? Well, I will tell you a splendid way to begin. You see, that bee-man has put down his hive and his coat with the bees in it. Just wait there till he gets out of sight, then catch a lot of those bees and squash 'em flat. If you spread them on a sticky rag and make a plaster and put it on the small of your back, it will invigorate you like everything, especially if some of the bees are not quite dead." "Yes," said the languid youth, looking at him with his mild eyes. "But if I had energy enough to catch a bee, I would be satisfied. Suppose you catch the lot for me." "The subject is changed," said the very imp. "We are now about to visit the spacious chamber of the King of Snapdragons." "That is a flower," said the languid youth. "Oh, you will find him a gay old blossom," said the other. "When he has chased you around his room, and has blown sparks at you, and has snorted and howled, and cracked his tail, and snapped his jaws like a pair of anvils, your energies will be toned up higher than ever before in your life." "No doubt about it," said the languid youth. "But I think I'll begin with something a little milder." "Well, then," said the other, "there's a flat-tailed demon of the gorge in here. He is generally asleep, and, if you say so, you can slip into the farthest corner of his cave, and I'll solder his tail to the opposite wall. Then he'll rage and he'll roar, but he can't get at you, for his tail doesn't reach all the way across the cave. I have measured him. It will tone you up wonderfully to sit there and watch him." "Very likely," said the languid youth. "But I would rather stay outside and let you go up in the corner. The performance in that way will be way more interesting to me." "You are dreadfully hard to please," said the very imp. "I have offered them to you loose, and I have offered them to you fastened to a wall, and now the best thing I can do is to give you a chance at one of them that can't move at all. It's a ghastly griffin, and is enchanted. He can't stir so much as the tip of his whiskers for 1,000 years. You can go into his cave and examine him just as if he were stuffed, and then you can sit on his back and think of how it would be if you should live 1,000 years old, and he should wake up while you were sitting up there. It would be easy to imagine a lot of horrible things he would do to you When you look at his open mouth full of awful fangs, his dreadful claws, and his horrible wings all covered in spikes." "I think that might suit me," said the languid youth. "I would much rather imagine the exercise of these monsters than to see them really going on." "Well, come on, then," said the very imp, and he led the way to the cave of the ghastly Griffin. The Bee-man went by himself through a great part of the mountain, and looked into many of its gloomy caves and recesses, recoiling in horror from the most dreadful monsters who met his eyes. While he was wandering about, an awful roar was heard, resounding through the passages of the mountain, and soon there came flapping along an enormous dragon, with body black as night, and wings and tail of fiery red. It had great foreclaws. In his great foreclaws he bore a little baby. "Horrible!" exclaimed the Bee-man. "He is taking that little creature to his cave to devour it." He saw the dragon enter a cave not far away, and following looked in. The dragon was crouched upon the ground with the little baby lying before him. It did not seem to be hurt, but it was frightened and crying. The monster was looking upon it in delight, as if he intended to make a dainty meal of it as soon as his appetite was a little stronger. "Oh, it is too bad," thought the Bee-man. "Somebody ought to do something." And turning around, he ran away as fast as he could. He ran through the various passages until he came to the spot where he left his beehive. Picking it up, he hurried back, carrying the hive in his 2 hands before him. When he reached the cave of the dragon, he looked in and saw the monster still crouched over the weeping child. Without a moment's hesitation, the Bee-man rushed into the cave and threw his hive straight into the face of the dragon. The bees, enraged by the shock, rushed out in an angry crowd and immediately fell upon his head, mouth, eyes, and nose of the dragon. The great monster, astonished by this sudden attack, was driven almost wild by the numberless stings of the bees, sprang back to the farthest portion of his cave, still followed by his relentless enemies, at whom he flapped wildly with his great wings and struck with his paws. While the dragon was thus engaged with the bees, the Bee-man rushed forward. Seizing the child, he hurried away. He did not stop to pick up his doublet, but kept on until he reached the entrance of the caves. There he saw the very imp hopping along on one leg and rubbing his back and shoulders with his hands, and stopped to inquire on the matter, and what had become of the languid youth. "He was no kind of fellow," said the very imp. "He disappointed me dreadfully. I took him up to the ghastly Griffin and told him the thing was enchanted, that he might sit on the back and think about what it could do if it was awake. And when he came near it, the wretched creature opened its eyes and raised its head. And then you ought to see how mad that simpleton was. He made a dash at me and seized me by one of my ears. He kicked me and beat me till I could scarcely move." "Oh, his energies must have toned up a good deal," said the Bee-man. "Toned up? I should say so," said the other. "I raised a howl, and the scissor-japper clipper came out of his hole, and got after him, but the lazy fool ran so fast that he could not be caught." The Bee-man now ran on, and soon overtook the languid youth. "You should not be in a hurry now," said the latter, "for the rules of this institution don't allow the creatures inside to come out of this opening, or to hang around it. If they did, they would frighten away visitors. They go in and out of their holes in the upper part of the mountain." The two proceeded on their way. "What are you going to do with that baby?" said the languid youth. "I shall carry it along with me," said the Bee-man, "as I go on my search, and perhaps I may find its mother. If I do not, I shall give it to somebody in that little village yonder. Anything would be better than leaving it to be devoured by that horrid dragon." "Oh, well, let me carry it. I feel quite strong now. Quite strong enough now to carry a baby." "Oh, thank you, but I can take it myself. I like to carry something, and I have now neither my hive nor my doublet." "It is very well that you had to leave them behind," said the youth, "for the bees would have stung the baby." "My bees never sting babies." "Oh, they probably never had a chance," remarked his companion. They soon entered the village, and after walking a short distance, the youth exclaimed, "Do you see that woman over there, sitting at the door of her house? She has beautiful hair, and she is tearing it to pieces. She should not be allowed to do that." "No," said the bee-man. "Her friend should tie her hands." "Well, perhaps she is the mother of this child," said the youth, "and if you give it to her, she will no longer think of tearing her hair." But you don't really think this is her child? Suppose you go over there and see." The bee-man hesitated a moment, and then he walked towards the woman. Hearing him coming, she raised her head, and when she saw the child, she rushed towards him, snatched it in her arms, and screaming with joy, covered him in kisses. Then, with happy tears, she begged to know the story of the rescue of her child, whom she never expected to see again, and she loaded the bee-man with thanks and blessings. The friends and neighbors gathered around, and there was a great rejoicing. The mother urged the bee-man and the youth to stay with her and rest and refresh themselves, which they were glad to do, as they were tired and hungry. They remained at the cottage all night, and in the afternoon of the next day the bee-man said to the youth, "It may seem an odd thing to you, but never in my life have I felt myself drawn to any living being as I am drawn towards this baby. Therefore, I believe that I have been transformed from a baby." "Oh, good," said the youth. "It is my opinion that you have hit on the truth. And now would you like to be changed back to your original form?" "Indeed I would," said the bee-man. "I have the strongest yearning to be what I originally was." The youth, who had now lost every trace of languid feeling, took a great interest in the matter, and early the next morning started off to inform the Junior Sorcerer that the bee-man had discovered what he had been transformed from, and desired to be changed back to it. The Junior Sorcerer and his learned masters were filled with enthusiasm when they had heard this report, and they set out at once for the mother's cottage. And there, by magic arts, the bee-man was changed back into a baby. The mother was so grateful for what the bee-man has done for her that she agreed to take charge of this baby and bring it up as her own. "It will be a grand thing for him," said the Junior Sorcerer, "and I am glad that I studied his case. He will now have a fresh start in life, and will have the chance to become something better than a miserable old man living in a wretched hut with no friends or companions but buzzing bees." The Junior Sorcerer and his masters then returned to their homes, happy in the success of their great performance, and the youth went back to his home, anxious to begin a life of activity and energy. Years and years afterward, when the Junior Sorcerer had become a senior and was very old indeed, he passed through the country of Orn and noticed a small hut about which swarms of bees were flying. He approached it, and looking in at the door, he saw an old man in a leather doublet sitting at the table eating honey. By his magic art, he knew this was the baby which had been transformed from the bee-man. "Upon my word," exclaimed the sorcerer, "he has grown into the exact same thing." And that's the Beeman of Orn. It is a very odd tale, but it's one of my favorite short stories. It is just such a strange story. Yes, Necro, I do have more stories like this one. I mean, hell, here's a list of things by the same author. But I've got other stories by other authors that are also very, very odd that I like a lot. I don't know, maybe I'll read more of them sometime. Anyway, I already threw a link to this into the description of the video. It's all public domain, so you can check them out for yourself. They're also on LibriVox if you want to have them read to you. I believe the reader for the Beeman of Orn and Other Fanciful Stories, I believe the reader for that was pretty good. It's been years. I believe the reader was good. Hello there, Buster. Hello. Uppercut, how's it going? Oh, well. I have now read your ghost messages. Ah. Yep. You know, the funny thing about public domain stories is that we could totally ROM hack them. I mean, mod them. I mean, you know, defile them with our modern sensibilities. After all, they made Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Why not? You can do it to anything in the public domain. I mean, I'd have no idea what to do with this one. I'm pretty happy with it the way it is. You could just hack it and decide, I'm going to change the genre now. What genre is it? Fantasy? A milieu story, maybe? I don't know. I know, let's change it into a romance. He'll find somebody else on the journey, and she'll also had been transformed, and they'll both figure out they were babies, and then they'll get adopted in different families. Then when the old man comes along, the wizard again, he'll find that they're together. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't need anything, but I know other old stories that I think do need to have modern defilement done to them. Gah. Every time I think about there's several of them that really could use help. I love The Mysterious Island, but that one really needs another draft. There are some changes you could make that would make it that would have made it a lot more popular. The Count of Monte Cristo. I love everything up until he escapes. Then it's a revenge is hollow and empty and bad story. So you spend the rest of the story like, yay, we're going to get revenge. Oh, man, revenge sucks. Why are we getting revenge? I get that's what the author wanted to get across, but it's not fun to read. Oh, no, I want a roaring rampage of revenge. I want it to be the mage... The mage of Monte Cristo, or maybe the necromancer, totally just go into the dark arts, and so that when he comes back at the, as a much older man, instead of just having wealth as his superpower, wealth and education, he'll just come back with the dark arts. Maybe he was accused of the dark arts, and that's why he was sent to prison. And there were other necromancers in there, and instead of a treasure, he gets told about like the library and the lab and stuff. And then he makes his escape, goes there, becomes an actual dark arts. You could totally do crazy shit. I don't know why I'm off on this weird tangent. I think I should take a nap and then do some XCOM. That's what I think. Hey, Rupu! You missed it. It's over. But that's okay. There'll be XCOM a little later. Yeah. Yeah, no, I have a bunch of crazy short stories I can think of by a range of authors, from E. Nesbitt to Frank Baum to, oh dear. I'm not even sure who wrote that one. Of course, if I throw all the names out there, you guys will just read them all and not wait for me to do more of these. And besides, I just introduced you to Frank Stockton. You got a whole bunch of tales you can listen to on LibriVox or just read right here. But this was the cream of the crop, in my opinion. This was my favorite. Seriously, this is one of my all-time favorite short stories. It's just so strange. There's nothing like it. It's just weird, and I love it. It's okay, Rupu. You can just the video will be archived, and you can just check it out from the start. It's great stuff. Anyway, until next time and every time. This is Hadriex signing off. Bye.